Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the final part of my response to Michael Jones on the marriage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Aisha radiallahu anha. Didn't we have fun?
When was he supposed to marry her? Like, according to you, when should he have married her 1400 years ago?
The real question is, why did he need to marry her? He already had other wives.
Oy vey. Dude, did you even bother to do 5 minutes of research before making your video? As any Muslim with even a little familiarity with the biography of the Prophet would tell you, if only you bothered to ask, is that his other marriages occurred later. After the death of Khadija radiallahu anha, he married the widow Sauda bin Zama. In the same year, which was year 10 of his prophethood, he also married Aisha. In both cases, the suggestion to marry had been made by others.
And one is more than enough.
This is your opinion and no one cares. My brother Arha Zafar has already smashed your poor arguments against polygyny, so no need to beat a dead horse here.
I mean, the life expectancy in the Middle Ages, which came way after Muhammad, peace be upon him, was 31 to 25 years old.
Once again, you did not read your source, let alone the title of the article that is right behind you, which says, old age isn't a modern phenomenon. Many people live long enough to grow old in the olden days too. The article is pointing out the reason life expectancy was so low was because of child mortality rates, but if you made it to the age of 25, you were likely to live past 50. So this is not an excuse to have child brides.
I agree with Jones, for once, but bear with me, I'm going to turn this back on him. You may be familiar with the biblical story of Absalom's revolt against King David. Much to the king's disappointment, his trusted counselor Ahithophel joined Absalom, causing the king to lament this betrayal in Psalm 55. The vast majority of Jewish and Christian sources link Psalm 55 with Ahithophel. In verse 23, David prophesies that treacherous people like Ahithophel will not live half their days. In other words, they will not live half the average lifespan. According to Psalm 90, verse 10, the average lifespan at the time was between 70 and 80. Whether this is historically true or not is irrelevant. Just stay with me. According to 2 Samuel 11:3, Bathsheba was the daughter of Eliam, and according to 2 Samuel 23:34, Eliam was the son of Ahithophel. Since there is no reason to assume that this was a different Eliam, that means that Ahithophel was Bathsheba's grandfather. Now, if he only lived half the average lifespan, that means he would have been in his 30s at the time of his death, which was by suicide. And Eliam had to be at least 20 years old, since Numbers 1:3 sets that as the minimum age for military service, and Eliam was part of David's elite guard. So how old would that make Bathsheba? The Talmud estimates her age to be as young as 6 when she gave birth to Solomon. This is of course absurd, and a more reasonable estimate would be that she was between the ages of 9 and 11. And yet, despite this, God loved David and called him a man after my heart. Strange, isn't it? But okay, maybe Jones and other Christians will not accept any of this. Maybe they will assume that Bathsheba's father Eliam was different from Eliam, the son of Ahithophel. Okay, fine. As unlikely as that is, let's accept that for now. They still have no biblical basis by which to critique the Prophet ﷺ, and Christian history is not on their side either, as we have seen. Now, let's close this series by answering the following objection from Jones the Angry Bird.
Nor does any of this justify the obvious immoral behavior of Muhammad. He is clearly not an excellent moral example for humanity.
The objection is that since Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a moral exemplar, he should not have married Aisha. Well, the example to follow is that intercourse can only be done when a person is physically mature and would not be harmed. This is why classical sources of Islamic jurisprudence, such as the Reliance of the Traveler, have always stated that sexual intercourse is only allowed when a woman can physically endure it, and if there is a risk of harm, a woman is not obliged to comply with her husband's request. Oh, and by the way, let me be a wise guy and note that since Christians like Jones follow the example of Jesus, they really can't criticize early marriage, even child marriage, since the biblical Jesus never spoke out against it. This is despite the fact that it was very common in his time. You have to ask yourself, why didn't the, quote, sinless, quote, Son of God tell his followers to stop encouraging child marriage and stop practicing child marriage? After all, he took the time to talk about divorce and to criticize the Pharisees for the abhorrent tradition of washing their hands before eating, but was silent on more urgent matters like child marriage and slavery. So Christians, why don't you follow your Savior's example? He clearly was in no rush to stop child marriage. Oops. Didn't I say I was going to be a wise guy?
وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا